Okay, let's unpack this. Mark Twain. When you hear that name, what pops into your head?
Usually the humor, right? The riverboats, Tom Sawyer, Huck
Yeah.
Finn, that iconic image.
Exactly. The witty, wise, the quintessential American guy. White suit, cigar.
Hmm.
But what if that's just scratching the surface? What if behind that, there's this really complex, sometimes quite dark, contradictory figure?
Yeah, someone wrestling with some deep pessimism, maybe, using his fame for some pretty fierce social critique.
And navigating personal stuff that was, well, let's just say complicated, even strange sometimes.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how someone can have such different sides. This book we've been looking at really pulls back the curtain.
Right.
It shows us a Twain who is constantly, grappling
Yeah.
with himself, with the world. It's much richer, more complex than the usual story you get.
Absolutely. So our goal here is to kind of get under that familiar surface, quickly get a handle on the key things about this incredible figure, all based on what's in this fascinating book.
To see the whole picture.
Exactly.
And, engaging with complex people like Twain, understanding their contradictions, their times, it's really a form of critical thinking we value.
It is.
It's the kind of reflection you find encouraged on resources like our Mindful Moments YouTube channel. It uses AI book analysis to help you think deeply, critically.
That's a great point. It's about looking closer, asking why
Right.
and how. And speaking of how does a guy born in the South, slave-owning family background,
Yeah.
how does he become this prominent, sometimes really radical Northern liberal voice? That journey. Wow.
It's truly amazing. The book maps it out pretty clearly. It shows his path away from that upbringing. Now, it does note he never totally shed everything.
Sure, you can't completely erase your past.
Right. You see some flashes of maybe boyhood racism in early letters, but the overall direction, it's towards a much broader view, and he fiercely denounced bigotry later on.
And he wasn't just changing personally, right? He used his fame. The book calls them intrepid stands.
Exactly. On things like religion, slavery, monarchy, aristocracy, colonialism. I mean, the list is long.
He backed women's suffrage early on, which was not universally popular.
No, definitely not. And his whole take on anti-Semitism is, well, it's complex. The book really digs into that.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote that piece listing charges against Jews, trying to figure out the root cause, suggesting it wasn't just religion, but maybe economic competition too.
Okay. Trying to analyze it.
Right.
Yeah.
But even while doing that, arguing against prejudice, the book points out he still, unfortunately, kind of perpetuated some stereotypes about Jewish people and money.
It really highlights that complexity, doesn't it? Even figures we look up to were tangled up in the biases of their era. It wasn't like flipping a switch.
No, definitely not. It's a nuanced thing. And his activism went into politics, too. That war on municipal corruption in New York, the book talks about.
Yeah, he really went after Tammany Hall, didn't he?
He did. And globally, too. He was a loud voice against American imperialism in the Philippines.
Spoke out against Russia.
And absolutely condemned King Leopold II's atrocities in the Congo. He didn't mince words.
He really stepped into that role, didn't he? The gadfly and reformer, kind of America's conscience in his later years.
Yeah, the book makes an interesting point there, that maybe his novel-writing genius peaked earlier, but his power as a polemicist, someone tearing down injustice, that just got stronger.
That's fascinating. And one area the book really focuses on, which is quite moving, is his connection with the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
We know about Frederick Douglass, but it goes deeper. Financing a Black law student at Yale, Waylon McGuinn.
Right. And explicitly framing it as a form of racial reparations.
Yeah.
That's pretty ahead of its time.
Absolutely. And championing the Fisk Jubilee Singers, saying they were the real deal, authentic.
Yeah, and scoffing at the minstrel shows, the caricatures. It wasn't just talk, it was active support.
You see that growing indignation about slavery over time, too, supporting Prudence Crandall Filio.
The teacher persecuted for opening a school for Black girls.
Right. And that sharp note he scribbled about the Constitution's centennial. Human liberty for white people may fairly be said to be 100 years old this year.
Oof. Yeah, cuts right through it. He definitely grew more pessimistic about human nature, about cruelty being permanent.
But he kept fighting it.
Exactly. His actions showed that determination.
Which brings us to another big theme in the book. Just how full of contradictions and struggles his life was. Internally, externally.
Yeah. His childhood, for instance.
Yeah.
Not just simple fun. The book talks about flashes of cruelty mixed with a genuinely warm heart.
He had that rebellious streak, didn't he? Drawn to the river, the edges of town.
Yeah.
Fascinated by Tom Blankenship, the original Huck Finn, because he was so independent.
Mm-hmm. But then you contrast that with the later need to fit in,
Yeah.
trying to please Livy, dragging himself to church even though he thought the singing was atrocious.
Huh. Yeah. And religion itself. What a journey there, that fire and brimstone childhood.
Right, totally saturated in it, only to later just rail against all the superstitions.
Heaven and hell became punchlines for him. And that idea of being a preacher, not out of faith, but because it looked like a safe job for someone who admitted he had no religion.
The book also hints at the shadow of his father, John Marshall Clemens. All those failed businesses, Salt River Navigation, the railroad, yet he was still Judge Clemens.
That mix of ambition and failure seems like it echoed in Twain's own life, doesn't it?
It really does. And speaking of family difficulties, his brother Orion,
Oh boy, yeah.
Twain saw him as this hopeless bungler, maybe even having a psychological ailment, yet he kept sending him money.
But hated getting advice from him, right? Resented being treated like a kid.
Exactly. Felt Orion had no right to chastise him. It was a really fraught relationship.
And then there's business. Ooh, a recurring nightmare for him, wasn't it? Such a stark contrast to his writing success.
Totally. That early mining speculation in Nevada,
Ooh, yeah.
rich on paper, totally broke in reality.
Right, the book quotes him saying, "The pick and the shovel are the only claims I have any confidence in now." Just pure frustration.
But still hoping, that macabre thing. Something must come, you know.
Yep.
Always waiting for the next big break.
Until the really big crash, the publishing house. Charles L. Webster and Company. The panic of 1893 just wiped them out.
Devastating. The debt was huge. And it's painful reading his own words. Ignorant of business and not able to learn a single detail.
That desperate plea to his partner, Fred Hall, "Get me out of business." Just heartbreaking.
And the book shows how later he became quite bitter, blaming Webster and Hall, feeling they'd messed up or misled him.
And the irony. The massive success they had publishing Grant's memoir.
Yeah, that convinced Twain he was some kind of publishing genius.
Right. Lured him away from what he did best writing to focus on his, as the book puts it, mediocre business skills. Success leading to ruin. Crazy.
It really is a profound irony. And that financial mess forced him back onto the lecture circuit, which he often hated.
Yeah, just for the money. But alongside all these public struggles, the book really emphasizes the personal side, too. The joys, but also the really deep losses in his family life.
Oh, absolutely. His brother Henry's death early on, that was a huge trauma. The book talks about Twain's complex memories, the guilt he carried.
Reports that people thought he might go insane from grief.
Then his courtship with Livy, it sounds like he really tried to reinvent himself, present this sanitized version.
Maybe leave the rough riverboat days behind. His friend Joseph Twitchell seems important then, helping him navigate that.
Yeah. And the book mentions that strange episode with Livy's paralysis early on and her recovery through faith healing, Dr. James Rogers Newton. It shows the different worlds they inhabited, belief-wise.
Once married, Livy's influence seems huge. The book says she had a calming influence, tried to cool off his combative nature.
Tried to make him behave.
Yeah, but also says she gave him real freedom of speech at home, right? Even when he was being sacrilegious. She protected that space for him.
She did. But her health, that was a constant worry, wasn't it? Fragile health, the burden of all the entertaining they did, later illnesses.
Twain sounds incredibly devoted, talking about the wearing and wearying slavery of housekeeping she faced, calling his feeling for her reverent worship.
But the book includes her side, too. Her own feelings about the demands on her. It wasn't easy.
And she wasn't just a wife, was she? She was a kindred soul, a literary partner.
Definitely. He relied on her judgment, consulted her on Huck Finn, even had his friend Howells check it for coarsenesses to make sure Livy would approve.
And she worried about his politics, didn't she? That his strident views might turn readers off.
She did. She was protective of his career, too. But the tragedies just kept piling up, sadly.
The death of their baby son, Langdon, that was the first big blow.
Then Livy's ongoing health issues, their daughter Susie's health problems, her difficult time at Bryn Mawr. The book even hints at a possible relationship with another woman, Louise Brownell, complicating things.
Wow. And Jean's epilepsy, those seizures sound terrifying. And there's mention of a potential blackmail letter. Good grief.
Yeah, just constant anxiety. And then Livy's death in 1904.
That just shattered him, didn't it? The book describes him as consumed by guilt, remorse, feeling he hadn't appreciated her, wasn't worthy.
Left him and the daughters completely adrift. The book describes Jean having a seizure right away, Clara having a breakdown, just immediate chaos and grief.
And the household dynamics after that got incredibly messy. Isabel Lyon, the secretary.
Right. She stepped into that vacuum, became more than a secretary, kind of a surrogate wife, managed everything, got power of attorney.
Which understandably caused huge problems with the daughters, Clara and Jean. Jealousy, suspicion. They thought she wanted to marry him.
And it all exploded publicly, didn't it? That fight with Isabel Lyon and her partner, Ralph Ashcroft.
Yeah, Ashcroft's vicious press attack in the New York Times, spilling all the family secrets, the daughters' struggles, sanitarium stays, trying to trash Isabel's reputation.
Awful. The book does say there was some truth in it. The daughters did have struggles, but the public airing was just brutal.
What a painful end to that chapter of his life. Betrayal, public humiliation.
Yeah. The book touches briefly on his later years, his need for companionship after all that loss, mentions his fascination with younger girls, teenagers like Gertrude Natkin, Dorothy Quick.
He called Natkin a dream grandchild.
Right. And Isabel Lyon's own journal entries, referenced in the book, noted his interest, but apparently didn't find it odd, framed it as companionship, not anything else. Just reflects his isolation, maybe.
Sad. But even in those tough later years, there were moments of light, weren't there? Like Helen Keller visiting Stormfield.
That's a great anecdote. Keller observing his showmanship but sensing the deep sadness underneath.
And Twain's tribute to Anne Sullivan Macy as a miracle worker, really beautiful.
It's those glimpses behind the curtain, that the book offers so well. And speaking of performance, that public persona.
Ah, yes, the lectures. He mastered that, didn't he? The poker face, the drawl, holding the audience.
Even though he hated doing it, hated the travel, only did it for the money.
The book mentions his collaborations, too. George Washington Cable noting his racial courage.
And his lecture agent, Major Pond, who apparently became the butt of Twain's private jokes, even though Twain sort of respected him, too. Mixed feelings.
His anti-imperialism really sharpened later on, didn't it?
Oh, definitely. Criticizing Leopold, British rule. That great line about the white man's notion that he is less savage than the other savages.
Yeah.
Just cutting.
A big shift from his earlier jingoism during the Spanish-American War.
Yeah, a real evolution. And he didn't hold back on figures like Teddy Roosevelt either. Saw him as power-hungry, insane upon war.
Wow. And his private religious views got really bleak, huh?
Extremely. The book reveals this deep pessimism, an indifferent God, maybe even malicious, certainty of hell.
Views he couldn't share while Livy was alive.
Absolutely not. Knew it would devastate her, kept it very private.
He had a complicated relationship with his own story, too, didn't he? Fending off biographers, but also wanting his version told.
Very much so. And he understood the media game, even back then, how the press shaped him as this author celebrity and all-purpose pundit expected to have an opinion on everything.
Blurring the lines between the performer and the actual man.
Constantly.
So pulling it all together, what does this book really show us about Mark Twain? He's so much more than the funny guy in the white suit.
Oh, absolutely. He's this sharp, evolving social critic, a reformer challenging injustice, even while dealing with his own biases.
He's a literary genius who was a disaster in business, a devoted family man, just scarred by loss and really difficult relationships.
Yeah, a human being just full of contradictions.
Yeah.
Cruelty and warmth, rebellion and conformity, public wit hiding private pain, and some genuinely radical ideas.
This exploration, drawing on the book, it really lets you see past the easy image, doesn't it? Appreciate the full, messy, vital complexity of Samuel Clemens and Mark Twain.
It really makes you stop and think. I mean, considering all these different parts we've talked about.
Yeah.
What stands out most to you about his complexity? And why does digging into this, understanding his life, his struggles, his beliefs, why does that feel important today?
Well, this kind of deep dive, looking closely, critically, at fascinating people, at the information in compelling books. That's exactly what we try to do. It's like the AI book analysis you find on our Mindful Moments YouTube channel. Our audio explorations aim to help you engage deeply, think critically about the information you come across.
And we really hope you found this journey into the many sides of Mark Twain as fascinating as we did.
If you did enjoy it, please subscribe so you don't miss what we explore next. Maybe share it with someone else who's curious about the real Mark Twain.
And if you want to dive even deeper into this biography yourself, check the show notes. There's a link where you can purchase the book.
Most importantly, keep asking those questions. Keep exploring. Keep thinking critically about what you learn.
There's always more beneath the surface.
Until next time.